Welcome to the Small Business Development Center's overview of the guidelines from the Oregon Health Authority on your personal services business. I'm going to go to a PowerPoint slide here in a moment, and joining with me in this session are my colleagues from the Small Business Development Center, Sean Harry, Yvette Johnson, and Jackie Babicki-Peterson. So I am going to share my screen now and go to my PowerPoint presentation of the Oregon Health Authority guidelines. So we're in a strange time right now, for sure. And basically we're looking at a new normal, a new way of doing business that's going to last for a while. And what I'm using as my resources for this PowerPoint presentation are the guidelines from the state of Oregon, and you can see the link to those guidelines at the bottom of the screen. I encourage you to go to them, read them, print them out, refer to them often. Also pay attention to the date. These guidelines are changing over time as we learn more about how to manage the pandemic in our community, so be aware of that as well. My name is Leslie Hildula, and I work with the Oregon Small Business Development Center at Portland Community College, running the restaurant program. My colleagues also run other programs designed at other types of businesses, including personal services and retail and just general business. So if you have questions, we are here to help. But let me dive quickly now into the guidelines. So first of all, what is helpful for me when I am looking at any kind of regulation is to understand what's behind them. I'm not particularly a great rule follower, and it helps me to understand the science and the reasoning behind rules and laws and regulations. It helps me enthusiastically embrace them, or at least consistently and thoroughly embrace them. So what we know right now is that we are in a global pandemic, and that we will be living with this virus in our community until we have a reliable treatment, a vaccine, or a way of testing people to know who actually has it and who doesn't. And this is months away, probably a year away, maybe two. So from a planning perspective, what we're encouraging our clients to think about is this: for the next 12 months or so, we are going to be in phase one and then eventually phase two of reopening. And then how are we going to survive and thrive in this situation? What new things do we need to adapt, and new things that we were required to do, and the new things that we are encouraged to do? And we'll be going over those in this presentation. So the primary tools we have are physical distancing and hygiene. Until we get those vaccines and until we get treatment that we know cures it quickly, we are looking at physical distancing and hygiene. And every time we take off a restriction, lift a restriction, we will see increased transmission and increased cases of the virus. What we're hoping to do during this time of reopening in Oregon, in the United States, and for that matter in the world, is to reopen in a way that limits that increase, so we don't launch another round of a large outbreak and have to go back to actually quarantining again and shutting our businesses. So, the mission here as business advisors and as business owners is, how do we meet the needs of our customers safely and profitably? Because if we can't do this profitably, then your business is not sustainable. So your financial well-being is important to you, of course, to your employees, and to the community. So we'll be talking about that as well in this presentation. I wanted to show you at the bottom of the screen the link to the scientific article by Aaron Bromage. He's an epidemiologist. This is where I'm getting a lot of the data that I use for this presentation. So we know the virus is in our community. This is an example of how the virus has hit Oregon. That's the top one. Deaths are now up to 158. This data was from May 27th, and 10 more people have died since then. So even though we're trending down, which is good, it's still in our community. People are still dying and getting very sick. You can see overall the national statistics are also getting better. So that's why we're seeing nationwide that we are slowly reopening and figuring out how to do that safely. County by county, we have differences, and that is why most of the state is now in phase one. Multnomah County is looking at opening phase one very shortly. The good news about all this is that social distancing and improved sanitation is working well in Oregon. And we can take some credit for that. We're doing a good job, and we can continue to do a good job. So as we are in phase one, continuing to practice good practices around this, we can then move into phase two and see even a more reopening of our economy. I'm really looking forward to seeing those schools open again and having not large, but smaller gatherings being okay. So there's an incentive for us to do this well so that we can get into phase two. One of the things that we can take advantage of the fact is that COVID-19 hit other parts of the world before it hit Oregon. So there is data out there that tells us about this virus that is extremely easy to spread and catch, more so than most things, more so than other things that have happened before, like SARS. And what we also have learned is that areas where you have a lot of people indoors with poor air circulation have been are very risky. That's where people tend to get the virus. And so that's why these events have been shut down, and why meat packing facilities and businesses like that are struggling right now to figure out how to handle the situation safely. We know that weddings, funerals, birthdays, big events like that where people came together were early spreaders of the disease. Also, business networking, face-to-face meetings where people come together from all over the country and shake hands and then leave and spread out were also ways that the virus spread. So the formula for this is successful infection of the COVID-19 virus equals exposure to the virus over time. So realizing, and also the data shows us, that most people get infected in their home by a family member. Somebody in their family has gone out, been exposed to the virus, probably unknowingly, and then they brought it home to their family, and that's how most people get infected. We also have learned that coughing and sneezing spreads this airborne virus better than just breathing or talking, although given enough time, breathing and talking can also spread this virus. We know that at least 44% of all infections and the majority of community-acquired transmissions occur from people without any symptoms, asymptomatic carriers of the virus. So how I think about that is to assume that everybody I meet, including myself, is an asymptomatic carrier of the virus, and to act accordingly. So assuming that anybody I could come into contact with in the course of shopping or doing business could be a carrier, how do I protect myself and how do I protect them? And if you follow that philosophy, the odds are very good that you can keep yourself safe, your employees safe, and your customers safe. We also have known from the data that's come out around the world is that most infections come from indoor situations, and that outdoor situations tend to be less risky. And so any kind of shopping or gathering outdoors is just a less risky thing to be. So a farmer's market, for example, is a less risky way to shop than in a grocery store. So these social distancing rules are in place to protect us when we're having brief exposures, or when we are or we need to do an activity where you need to get close to somebody. And then what other methods can you use to keep yourself safe? So social distancing basically says we need to stand 6 feet away apart, because then there's not enough time for the infectious viral load to reach us in any amount of density of virus germs that can affect us. So outside is safer than indoors. 6 feet away protects you even if you're indoors with something, and even if you're in the room with somebody who is a carrier unknowns to themselves. One of the things then to realize, knowing that the amount of time that you can be exposed to this increases your risk, the employee working in a store is at more risk than a customer who is shopping in the store. And that's why it's required that all employees in any type of business that is opening up and dealing with the public, especially, need to wear masks. And that's why we're encouraging customers to wear masks. As Dr. Baumann from Washington County said, when I wear a face covering, I'm protecting you from any inadvertent coughing or sneezing or even talking that I'm going to be doing when I'm in your space. And when you wear a face mask, you are protecting me. And that is why so many stores and businesses are requiring that customers wear a mask to come into the store. And it is to protect the health of those employees who are in that store or for a long period of time. This data, as I said, is now a little bit out to date. We are up to 158 deaths now in Oregon from the virus. This is a screenshot of the guidelines. I encourage you to go online, find these guidelines for your industry. In this case, we'll be talking about personal services. I will be quoting from this document. This is not my opinion. This is from the document. If I'm going to share you my opinion, I'll let you know that it's my opinion. And also my colleagues, Sean and Jackie, may also chime in with their thoughts as well. So you run a personal services business, know that as you open to taking clients again, client screening is required. It's not encouraged, it's not recommended, it's required. And so the state is very clear about things that are required versus things that they're encouraging you to do. So before you have contact with a client, you need to ask them these 4 questions. Have you had a new or worsening cough? Have you had a fever? Have you had shortness of breath? Have you been in close contact with anyone with these symptoms or anyone who has been diagnosed with COVID-19 in the past 14 days? We recognize still in this state that there isn't enough testing to test everyone who thinks they might have been exposed or who thinks they might have the illness. So that's why we're also basing our judgment calls on symptoms as well as actual diagnosis. So if they say yes, then you are required to reschedule the appointment until those symptoms have been resolved for at least 72 hours, or if they've had contact with someone that they know is sick with any of these symptoms for at least 14 days after that last contact. So you also required to record client data. And this is because of the ability to do contact tracing, which will be improving in our state and around the nation every week and every month. We'll get better at this. Contact tracing only works though if we can actually keep track of people and know who they interacted with. So you will need to keep records of your client contact information, the date and time of the appointment, who was the provider for that service, and then keep that for 60 days. And know that if there's a positive COVID-19 case associated with your business, the Public Health Department, Oregon Health Authority, may need the business to provide this information for contact tracing investigation. This is how pandemics are handled, how epidemics are handled, how they've been handled for decades, is that contact tracing is a standard way of helping contain and minimize the spread of contagious diseases. To the extent possible, providers should but not required to take people's temperatures before you provide the service. And the beauty now of technology is we have touchless infrared thermometers that makes it easy to do this. And that way you can reschedule an appointment with any client that has a temperature. I think we are going to see a lot more of this. Maybe it's going to be getting on an airplane, on any public transportation, going into certain facilities. People will be taking our temperature. So we're going to see more and more of these devices. And I would encourage you as a personal services provider, one who is already involved with your clients in such an intimate way, to embrace this technology. So here's some more requirements for personal services. For one, you're not going to provide service to anybody who shows symptoms or has a temperature. Also, you need to immediately send home any employee that shows these symptoms. Also, because we know that there are asymptomatic carriers of COVID-19. We have to maintain 6 feet of physical distancing between clients including in our waiting and checkout areas, which means that you'll need to maybe reorganize your facility a bit in order to do that. You can see in this example in a barber shop is they don't have people sitting next to each other. They're in the same room. They're all wearing masks and they're 6 feet apart. Now, there is an exception to that, of course, for personal services, is because you actually have to touch your clients to provide personal services in most cases. And so you have an exception, but because of that exception, there are extra protocol in place. It's important that you post signage about the symptoms to educate your employees and educate your customers about when they need to stay home and who to contact if they need assistance. So you will see, you should have this type of signage in your place of business. And all the signage that I'm using in this presentation is available for free on the internet. There's a lot of signage out there, so it shouldn't be difficult for you to find signage that fits your style of business.
Hey, Leslie, I have a question about these supplies as well as signage. So the signage is available on the internet. And then also, what about is there a resource to get those thermometers and also any PPE and that kind of stuff? Will you be talking about that?
A little bit. The thermometers are easy to find online. Just Google infrared thermometers and you'll find all kinds of sources for them. And I would encourage you to order them soon, right? One of the things that happens is reopening happens sometimes quickly and takes people unawares and they're not prepared for reopening. And one of the things I'm hoping is that people will start planning to how to get all that personal protective equipment and the extra equipment that you need, like the thermometer, so that you're ready to go. We'll talk about masks a little bit in a minute. One of the things you'll also see as you're out and about in your community is how people are giving visual clues, visual cues to your customers and your employees on how to maintain social distancing. Like in this photograph, it's actually literally helping you know where to stand to give that 6 feet of distance. I think this is very helpful because we are teaching people new habits, and that takes repetition. And this stuff helps. And I think you've probably seen it if you've gone grocery shopping. And you are also required to manage this inside your business and outside your business. So they don't want people queuing up outside your business either, but if they are, put markings out there to help them maintain 6 feet of social distancing. And again, signage about 6 feet apart. There's lots of different types of signage out there. Find something that picks your brand. Encourage your clients to wait outside in a car or to wait at home until their appointment is ready, until their appointment or until the provider is ready for them. Again, that the county does not want people, crowded up either inside in a waiting room or outside. So that is on you to manage that. You are required to do that. Some folks have already embraced being online. I have been booking my haircut appointments online now for a couple of years. If you haven't done that yet, now is the time to install appointment apps on your website that are friendly to smartphones. And you will find that there is a lot out there that's available and the prices have come down. And feel free to talk to an SPDC advisor or to people in your industry about what they're using. You can often go to maybe a point of sale provider that you already have, or perhaps you're using some sort of online bookkeeping system. Those systems that you're already using might also have appointment software that will be easy for you to install. Look to offer curbside pickup for products that you might be selling. The other thing that the state is doing is encouraging you to assign one provider per client throughout your encounter to minimize the risk of spreading any kind of contagion to multiple people. And we've been talking a lot about the fact that this virus is mostly spread through the air and through somebody, sending it out through their mouth and then somebody else breathing it in. It also can land on surfaces and live there for a while. So it's important that we also clean surfaces and wash our hands often and stop touching our face. However, you're in the personal services, right? Touching faces is often what you do, if not other parts of a client's body. So we're going to talk more about that. You will need to frequently clean and sanitize your work areas, your high traffic areas, places where your customers are touching. Anything that is not easy to wipe down, you probably should put a covering over it so you can wash that covering. So if you have fabric chairs, for example, you should probably cover them with something that you can then wash or dispose and replace. Fitting rooms are considered relatively low risk. So if you are selling something that requires a fitting room, that is allowed. And so you might encourage your customers to use hand sanitizers before using the fitting room. You are required to remove all unnecessary items that customers would touch and then leave for other customers to touch, such as magazines, newspapers, menus, and you're no longer providing those cups of tea and coffee and water like you've had in the past. Anything that you'd provide it in a way that they would take with them rather than use and then leave behind. So all those lovely piles of magazines now will go away. You will need to provide training to your staff and educational materials on the hand washing and cough and sneeze etiquette and how to use the protective equipment. This training is your responsibility. There are lots of aids to help you provide that training that are available on the website. So for example, the link is I'm trying to show that link here, healthoregon.org/coronavirus. You'll find lots of information. One of the things you also need to do is make sure your break rooms are thoroughly cleaned and disinfected and that your employees do not congregate in them. And of course, thoroughly clean your restroom facilities at least once a day. Also, they're encouraging you to, again, like I said, pay attention to the seating and make sure that it's either something you can clean between appointments or use covers that can be changed between appointments. Change to electronic options for your appointment books so that you don't have a lot of touching of these books by your employees and maybe by clients. And also use online methods of payment. So if you haven't done that already, now is the time. And again, there's lots of advice about what type of online services you can use. Here is a link to Cosmos Salon Studios and some of their recommendations. A lot of information online. And I suspect you can ask other providers that you know in the industry about what they're using. Even something simple like Venmo, which people can have on their smartphones, can be used to accept payments. And you'll find that many of your customers have become very accustomed to this. And the ones that are not, you may be in a position to educate them on how it's done. You want to provide alternative ways to pick up things and to order ahead so that people can come in quickly. Some of you have stores where you are selling things as well as providing a service. So keep in mind that you can invite people in to shop, but not everybody will want to do that. Some people will prefer to just do online ordering and curbside pickup. So during this strange time, you want to look for ways to provide that. So maybe that special shampoo that they like or that special hair gel that they love, for them to be able to come by and have you bring it out to them, an item that they've already paid for online, is a real service to your customers. You know your customers. Many of them are at risk with underlying health conditions, and they will appreciate you taking consideration of their situation and going that extra step. So a personal services business must require face masks. It's been what we're hearing from people who are already doing this is that some face masks are more comfortable than others. I had one store owner in Selwood tell me that she changed to paper masks because she found them more comfortable to wear for many hours at a time. That was her preference. Either way, the state doesn't care as long as you're wearing some type of face mask or a face shield if you are doing face-to-face services. So if you're trimming somebody's mustache If you are doing a facial tattoo, if you are plucking their eyebrows, providing them with a facial, they would it would require that you wear a face shield to protect that employee. For people who are just, say, cutting a hair like we see in this photo, a face mask is fine. So you have to provide this personal protective equipment to your employees. You can require your customers to wear them as well. And here's an example of signage where a mask is required to enter the store. And what tends to help customers with that is to explain to them that you are really concerned about the health of the employee that is in the store for many hours of the day or providing the service for many hours of the day. People tend to respond well to that. It is law. It is required by the state of Oregon to wear masks. This is true. But it's also showing respect and care for those employees as well as for your customers. You can sell masks. I've heard some anecdotal stories about people providing masks for free. You can also do that, or you can sell masks. So one way or the other, I would have masks available. But I also believe that customers are going to learn, as I have learned in my shopping, is I need to put a mask in my purse along with my wallet and my keys. And that when I leave the house, I bring a mask with me because I need to plan on the fact that I may need to go inside a building where I need to put a mask on to help protect people in case I'm one of those carriers, because I don't know, I might be. There was an interesting Willamette Week article about this issue, and I encourage you to look at this article. When you think about requiring things of customers, for decades now, we have seen signs in restaurants saying, no shoes, no shirt, no service, right? And we go, that's fine. Well, now we're adding another one. No shoes, no shirt, no mask, no service. It's okay. And then the customers can take that mask off when they're eating or drinking or getting that facial or having that mustache trimmed. But it's this new way, it's this new norm we're in now, and we're going to be in it for a year and maybe two. So let's help each other embrace it. And I think, this is my opinion, that businesses can certainly require this, and it's up to the customer how they feel about it and respond to it. They are not entitled to shop in your business. It's a choice. They have other options. And I know that I want to show my appreciation and respect for the retail frontline workers and the personal service workers that are out there providing those haircuts and those massages by showing a mask when I'm in their place of business. Now, getting back to what you're required to do by the state of Oregon in the Oregon Health Authority guidelines, you are required to, if you use capes, to drape each client in a clean cape for the service. You can use disposable capes, or you can launder them between clients. Laundering them in hot soapy water and a hot dryer kills the germs. And so you can reuse these things, but only one time per client, not over and over and over from client to client. Also, the clothing that you wear, if you put on a smock with your clients or a coat of some type, you need to change it between clients as well, in case one of your clients, unknowingly probably, put virus germs on your clothing because you are so close. So you need to change your garments. And when you take them off, put them in a closed container that can then be taken and washed safely. Of course, you're going to wash your hands between clients. You are probably already doing that because there are, of course, sanitary protocols in your industry. So we're just taking it up a notch and reminding you that there's a deadly consequence of not doing this properly. One of my colleagues was telling me about a friend who got a staph infection from having her nails done a year ago. So you're already aware of this as professionals in this field, how important it is to be careful. So this is a continuation of that. You want to wash hands after touching surfaces that other people have touched. You want to make sure, of course, that everybody, your employees and your customers, have access to hand washing facilities and do it properly. What is the thing that they're saying is you you saying happy birthday twice under your breath while washing your hands, and that gives you the 20 seconds that you're looking for. So, more on cleaning and disinfectant. Providers are required to thoroughly clean and disinfect all your surfaces that could be potentially exposed through air transmission of the virus. And there's details about what that looks like in the guidelines. I encourage you to go get these guidelines and get the details of those. I think that you're already doing much of this already. So it won't be all brand new to you is what I'm trying to say. Fortunately, the virus is killed with soap and water. So that is a relief. Again, I want to point out that clothing items are not a major way of spreading the virus. So fabric and fitting rooms and things like that are relatively low risk. So I wanted to share some tips from the trenches, from what I've been hearing for this past couple of weeks in in Oregon, as different parts of the state are reopening. One of the ways to handle, say, jewelry is to provide washable cloth gloves that people can put on, clean ones, right? They can put it on, try the jewelry, and then when they're done, they take off those gloves and they put them in a container, a closed container that you then wash at the end of the day. Have you ever been to the bulk foods counter in your local grocery store, maybe to get spices or tea? And they'll have these spoons. They'll have clean spoons and dirty spoons. And you scoop out your tea and you put them in a little container, and then you take your tea and you put it in the used container. Some makeout counters have this too. This is a continuation of that kind of thing. Your customers will have seen similar things, and as long as you let them know and you educate them about it, they will use it. Also, getting back to how we get our personal protective equipment, there are local sources for this stuff. For example, Spool Town, Garnish. There was some other examples of organizations too. Sean and Jackie, do you remember some of those other local sources for masks that we were talking about earlier today?
Well, a lot of our retail folks who have been making their own clothing, that kind of thing, they're almost all selling masks now.
I think
making their own and selling them.
Right. And Flipside, I think the hat store, yep. I think they're one of them. Also, when you're looking for new applications to help you with your online thing, go to existing sources you may already be using, like Lightspeed or Shopify. They are all set up to help you. What they're offering works well, not that expensive, and often you'll find excellent customer service on how to do this as well. Create outdoor shopping spaces and outdoor service spaces when possible, and think about coordinating with your neighbors, paying attention to what the city is providing. We heard some good news about the city of Portland today, that they are trying their best to make it easy for you to do business outdoors. And I will be posting information about that in our Retail Business Builders Facebook page, and that Small Business Management for Retailers Facebook page, and the Restaurant Business Builders Facebook page about those links. What you want to be careful to do when you're looking at how you might use a sidewalk or a parking lot that your city is allowing you to do is coordinating with your neighbors. The other thing that's important is that you have a parking spot in front of your business where people can be dropped off or where they can pick up product that they've ordered from you. And the city, the Portland, I imagine other cities are also wanting to support that so that you'll be able to maintain that spot for those quick interactions that people want to do. So that's part of coordinating with your neighbors also, is you don't want to do something that impacts their business in a negative way. So I think, and a lot of these guidelines that we will see, if people are having difficulties with them, they'll be complaint driven. And so if you're coordinating with your neighbors and working together in a way that works well for you, all of your customers, as well as pedestrians that might be going by, I think you'll find that it's going to work well and your local governments will be supportive. Pre-shopping online with Zoom and with FaceTime, people are finding that to be very successful. Even preloading a fitting room, helping people do shopping by letting them be outside your store and then you bring items to them to look at. I actually bought myself a vase from a secondhand store a couple of days ago. I didn't have my mask with me because I didn't have my purse with me. I was out walking my dog and I saw this beautiful vase in the window, and the store owner came out wearing a mask and talked to me about the vase. And so I was able to purchase the vase. Well, actually I have to go back and purchase it, but I got the information I needed to make my purchasing decision through her flexibility. You will need to educate your staff and customers continuously, ongoing, with signage and with conversation. It's not just one and done. This is going to be ongoing. Again, customers will and probably should be wearing masks. So if you are going to require your customers to wear masks, we're supportive of that, and so is the state. Return policies, we've seen some shift there. People are thinking, maybe I'm not going to do returns anymore. For one, I want to protect my profit margin. Two, I want to reduce traffic in my store. And also maybe there might be a perception of risk, even though that risk is actually small. Now you could set items aside for 48 hours and let people know that. We know that we are going to be seeing secondhand stores opening up. And so they have to think about that, minimizing real risk and also the perception of risk, and coming up with a policy for your business around that. Sneeze guards could be also very important in your business at the checkout counter, or sneeze guards, face shields for when you're providing face-to-face services. Local sources for that are Grands and Benedict, and Applied Plastics can do custom sneeze guards for you. People in Portland are using local couriers for deliveries, such as Runley and Cascade Courier. And then also hand sanitizers can be very handy, especially if there's not easy access to a sink. Maybe for your customers, if you don't have a sink nearby for them to use, you can provide hand sanitizers and sell them. I was in Ace Hardware a couple of days ago, and they were selling Two Town Ciders hand sanitizers, because those businesses are local distilleries in Portland. They also have had to pivot because they have lost so much business because the restaurants have been closed and the bars have been closed to such an extent that they've thought, how can we maintain our cash flow? And so they've actually, many of them have pivoted to offering hand sanitizers. So this is a way that you can help your customers and support other local businesses. So that gets us, whoa, boy, that just dropped us all the way to the front of my presentation. Isn't that fun? Okay, let me get back to where I want to be. So our last slide, and this is where I'm going to ask my colleagues to chip in, to step in, is the resources that are available to you here in Portland. So Sean, could you talk a little bit about SPDC Resources?
Sure. We have a variety of resources. One of the things that we do is we help people build their business around the thing that they are the expert at. And in this case, we've been taking a lot of time to educate ourselves and our teammates about both the requirements and ways to get creative about growing your business. We do that through both one-on-one advising at no cost, but then we also provide classes and programs. One of the things that has happened just in the last couple of, well, a month and a half probably, is we have a couple of, we have 3 different meetup groups meeting virtually online, one for retail, one for restaurants, and one for global trade. And those are ways for people to do virtual meetup as well, networking, as well as to get information about sort of some of the changes that are coming down in not only in the health side of things, protecting yourself from the pandemic, but also on the business side of things, such as some of the loans that are out, the Paycheck Protection Program, the EIDL, and those kinds of things. So there are a lot of resources, and If you go to bizcenter.org, bizcenter.org, you can register for advising.
Yes, I'll go ahead and add that. bizcenter.org/PCC.
Yep.
There you go. Jackie, would you talk about a little bit about cash flow management during reopening? I heard you be very eloquent about that yesterday, and so maybe you could give some advice to people.
I would be happy to talk about that. And before I do, Leslie, I was thinking the whole time you were talking about clients who I have who are acupuncturists and massage therapists. And, you know, they really have an issue, you know, because they're right there, you know, with a naked body. And it seems to me a lot of this applies, but maybe the best thing I saw in addition to that for them was the idea of a face shield, you know, which give you a whole lot more kind of freedom of action when you're working with somebody in those professions than possibly a face mask, you know, which drives us all crazy. And so I thought that was a really good idea to add that in there, particularly for those two professions, you know, where you're just talk about up close and personal. And in my life, I'm waiting to get back to both of those. So that's helpful to me. Cash flow is, you know, a huge problem. I wanted to add that some of our one-person businesses particularly have had a terrible struggle getting pandemic unemployment coverage. We know that's just been a scandal, actually, in the state of Oregon. It's been terrible. And they are making promises that they will do better, but there are still thousands and thousands and thousands of unprocessed applications behind at this point. And many of those are solo businesses that have never qualified for unemployment before. And, you know, I would just say hang in there. If you've got your application and they're slowly working through it and we have promises of better things. However, there are some other resources. A new one just came on yesterday from Mercy Corps Northwest. And Mercy Corps Northwest is has been wonderful and very helpful to people, little businesses particularly, and they're now offering a $15,000 loan to people who did not qualify for payroll protection or EIDL or be able to get money any other way. And you might go to their website and take a look at that. That just happened. It just opened June 1st. And I think that the cash is going to be a huge issue for people if they didn't get some of the support. You know, if you're a one-person business, and you know, I've even sent people to the food banks and you know, Oregon Food Bank and other places because they're pretty at the end of the rope on what they're going to do. And I think this is a matter of still possibly, if you're not open, you could sell some future services. You know, you could offer a gift certificate or a you know, a coupon to be used in the later, you know, so that you can get paid now for things that you need. And, you know, I'm thinking you know, if you have a good hourly rate for what you do, maybe even something, you know, like a few $100s would make the difference to you. Mm-hmm. I think cash-wise, also for our tiny little personal services businesses, this is a great time to go talk to your landlord about what you can do about rent, which is a huge portion of what a lot of people are paying. And there's a possibility of working with those landlords. Certainly your supplies expenses should be very low for being closed, but when you open, there's supplies you're going to have to buy. You know, you're going to have to buy some personal protective equipment, maybe some masks, some hand sanitizer, you know, cloths, some signage. And I think it's, you know, there's going to be a need for that. And possibly that's one of the things the Mercy Corps loan might be very good for, is to do some of that startup cost. if you simply do not have the resources to get yourself back in business. I do think most of those small companies have a loyal following, and I think that hopefully they have a database, and I think that if they send information out to their clientele and say, this is what we're planning to do with our opening, and if there's any way you would make an appointment and pay for that appointment when you make the appointment, that will let me be available to serve you, okay? I'm just thinking that might be a really good way to work with, these little solo businesses.
Thank you very much. That's wise and useful information. I appreciate that. So I think it's time that we wrap this up. Know that the advisors at the Small Business Development Center are available to help you at no cost. So reach out to us. Go to bizcenter.org/PCC to reach us here, or bizcenter.org to reach the SPDC in general. And we have client orientations that are offered by Yvette. Was it every week or every other week, Yvette?
It's about every other week online.
Right. So you can learn more about what we have to offer and how we can help support you in this very strange time that we're in. So thank you very much, and keep in touch.